And we are live. Welcome, one and all. This is iCritic Live. I am Kevin T. Rodriguez, the film critic of iCritic.net. I am your host. This is the podcast where we talk about movies, pop culture, and life in between. And a few weeks ago, we did the top 10 worst films of the year. And while there was some disagreement between me and my co-host about whether those deserve to be considered the worst of the year, it was ultimately a very informative show. And for the most part, we agreed that these are movies you should not see. And I have decided to invite her back for the best films of the year. Welcome, Rachel from Rachel's Reviews.
Hey!
So what's interesting about last time is like you put a couple movies on your worst films of the year list that I actually recommended.
Yeah.
So are we going to put movies on the best list that we disagree with? My magic 8-ball says yes, but the arguments, while they are fun and here for your entertainment, is probably not the main takeaway. Again, the main takeaway is these are movies that we saw and we felt if we could only pick 10 movies to recommend, these are the ones that we would recommend. And for those of you who follow Rachel's channel, she actually updated her list. So
yes, there's one addition to my top 10 from my best of video. So
yep, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But before we do, we both, of course, want to share the movies that, you know, we almost put them on the list, but we didn't quite. And I had actually 7 movies that this could have easily been a top 15 best of the year list. And sometimes I do that, but we decided just to do it for 10 for this podcast. But for my written article, we might actually do a top 15. So that's an incentive for you to check out my article below after this is done. But movies that almost made the top 10 for me was The Batman, which I really love the aesthetic. I love the story. It was definitely the best one since The Dark Knight. I also really like Triangle of Sadness, which, almost shows the sadness of the rich and the famous and the influencers, and it was really touching. I also had a strong spot for The Fabelmans, which, contrary to what some people think, I don't think that's necessarily a movie about movies. It's a movie about a family and coming to terms with it not being as perfect on the outside, and you see it on the inside, and you kind of discover that it's not perfect. So I really like that one. I also almost put She Said on there, which was a, great movie about the Harvey Weinstein scandal. Tar came close. Cate Blanchett, one of the performances of her life, and just really interesting visual choices and a commentary on cancel culture that I think is just going to become more relevant as time goes by. Till, which was almost on the list, primarily for the great lead performance, but there's just one other movie I couldn't not put on there. And Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which, to be fair, would probably be a number 15 or something, but it was just so charming. And since it's still in theaters, it's almost worth mentioning that is a high recommendation. So those are my honorable mentions. Rachel, what are some of the movies that didn't quite make it for you?
So I have Decision to Leave is my number 11, and that was on my top 10 originally. It's so well made, so well acted, really interesting story. It's great. It's probably the best made movie of my top 20, but the others I liked just slightly more. Number 12, I have The Outfit, which I think was probably one of the most underrated movies of the year. Very great script, nice twist, beautifully made, great acting. I'm normally not a big mob movie person, but I thought this was really well done. Number 13, I have Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Hilarious. I really enjoyed it. We did a whole episode of Talking Disney on it, me and Stanford.
Yeah, I did an episode on that on my channel too.
Yeah, I really thought it was funny. So, and then 14, I have All Quiet on the Western Front. Very well made. I wasn't a big fan of a lot of the Oscar contenders this year, but this was one that I thought was very well done. Another underrated surprise of the year was the new Father of the Bride. I thought it looked terrible, and it ended up actually being really well written and charming and funny. And that's a franchise that all 5 movies I've enjoyed. So I like it. And then 16, I have The Bad Guys. Love the animation. Thought it was funny. Liked the characters. And lastly, for 17, I have The Menu. It's a movie that just stayed with me, and I keep thinking about it. It was legitimately funny, legitimately kind of terrifying at times in its own way. I thought it was very well done, and I'll never look at s'mores the same way.
I have a friend who actually threw a party on The Menu and decided to serve s'mores as the main food. We don't want to spoil what that means, folks, but if you've seen it, you know why that's a very sick thing to do if you're going to throw a viewing party.
It keeps rising up my rankings. The more I think about it, the more I really thought it was very well done.
Yep. So now we're going to do our top 10 list. Now, do you want to start or shall I? I will give you the choice.
I can start. Well, my number 10 is a movie that I think is kind of made for me. Everybody knows I love Christmas movies. I love musicals. And so I got to put Spirited as number 10 on my list. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the choreography and the big musical numbers and the songs from Pasek and Paul. The kind of fresh take on Christmas Carol. I love Christmas Carol. I think that Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds had wonderful chemistry as friends. I liked Octavia Spencer in it. It does get a little convoluted, a little bit crowded. It probably is about 20 minutes too long. I will admit to all those flaws, but I still just really, really enjoyed it. It was made for me.
So Spirited was our Christmas movie this year. Every year I pick a Christmas movie for the family to watch, and I actually got to see this in theaters as a mystery movie at Regal, and I was instantly won over by its charm. I like the songs. I, by the way, think the wrong song got nominated for Best Song. I think the opening number was... I'm still listening to that opening number, and it's not even Christmas anymore.
I know. I wish, though, that it had gotten actually nominated. It's submitted. With
they didn't even submit it. Yeah, I think they nominated the Good Afternoon because they could get Ryan Reynolds a nomination, which
well, they didn't nominate it, but they submitted it.
They did submit the Christmas Morning Feeling song.
No, it didn't get Good Afternoon. It didn't get nominated.
I think Good Afternoon did get. Oh, it didn't. You're right.
No, they nominated that Diane Warren because you got to nominate Diane Warren for something in a movie nobody's ever heard of.
Well, Pinocchio and Taylor Swift got screwed on the song nomination as well. Like, how did you not nominate those two songs when they were being nominated everywhere else? But, well, anyway, but yeah. So the bottom line is, great. I do like the songs. I do like the chemistry. Now I do have to share a funny story about my brother-in-law. Like, he had like the funniest comment. He like said, "Oh, I turned it off after 5 minutes." I'm like, "Really? Why?" It's like, "Oh, it was stupid. They were just singing the whole time." It's like, Jason, it's a musical. They're gonna sing in a musical. So I guess if you don't like musicals, then this choice isn't gonna do much for you. But hey, if you like musicals, if you like good feeling movies, if you like comedies, I mean, I think Spirited is definitely a high recommendation. I mean, I didn't put it on my top 10 list, but it's easily.
This I'm not saying like the best made movies or the ones that are most crowd pleasing. This is just my list of what I liked. So. Oh yeah.
This is all personal preference, and that's going to be even more evident with my number 10 pick, which is going to be. I'm really looking forward to seeing your reaction on this one. So my number 2 pick is admittingly not the easiest film to watch. In fact, even though I have told people, this movie is pure cinema, but you need to be in A, the right mind frame, and B, you have to be ready to be challenged. And, well, it's Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. Now, my number 10 pick is normally what I reserve for what was a personal favorite film of mine. Not necessarily what was technically one of the best films of the year. Now, Bardo had like this very weird reaction to me where I was in a love-hate relationship with it while I watched it, because it started out being really interesting and then it was getting long. And then there were scenes like I didn't quite understand why they were working this this way, and then there were some scenes that seemed completely pointless, and then the ending did something so surprising, like it all of a sudden recontextualized the whole thing. And then when I decided to watch it again, I understood it better, and it kind of almost left me feeling like 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the first time I watched that movie, I really didn't like it very much, but then the second time it was like, it kind of dawned on me, oh, so the director was ahead of what my expectations were or what I was thinking about. And at the end of the day, Bardo ended up being a truly brilliant piece of filmmaking that will not be everyone's cup of tea. This is like one of the rare top 10 choices where I put a little asterisk next to it, like not everyone is going to like this. You're going in for, kind of like reading a Thomas Pynchon novel where it's like you really have to go in with almost a challenging mindset. This is a movie that's not easy to watch, but if you're up to the challenge and if you really don't mind digging a little deeper, and even the title, like I didn't know why it was called Bardo until I realized Bardo was the Spanish word for float. And then again, the ending, and it's like, oh, this all makes sense now. Unfortunately, the bad thing about this is a lot of the reasons why I like it, I can't talk about because it's so tied into how the ending completely contextualized the whole thing. But I think this was like one of Alejandro G. Iñárritu's most personal films. It's an astounding achievement in cinema, even if it's not the most audience accessible thing to watch.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I mean, I'm up for the challenge. I just thought it was pretentious, like slog. I did not enjoy it, but I'm not a fan of Iñárritu. I famously really did not like Birdman when it was won Best Picture. Everyone else was loving it, but I feel like a lot of people have kind of come around to my view on it, and I'm not a fan of it. I didn't like the route. I'm just not a fan of his. I think that he gets a lot of credit for the brilliance of his cinematographers. And,
well, he's working with the cinematographers, and
of course,
and I mean, isn't that what all cinematographers do? The director says, "I want this shot," and the cinematographer gets the shot.
Right, but in a movie like Birdman, in my opinion, the story and the script are not on par with, like, he gets, like, yes, the one shot are really great. That's really good. But I don't know, just everything else. I could go on for a long time of all the things that I have problems with Birdman. But yes, the cinematography, he gets great work from his cinematographers. I will give him that. But the story and the characters and this thing was just so self-indulgent. So,
it's a movie about him and his life. So I don't mind if it's self-indulgent, because here is a movie where he is like, he's questioning, maybe he's having a midlife crisis. I don't know, but he's thinking about his life, his career, where he is. He's weighing his successes, his losses. In fact, before this movie even came out, he said he had a really hard time finding funding for this movie because he had made so many movies in English that there weren't really any Mexican studios that wanted to fund the movie because he wasn't Mexican enough. And likewise, a lot of American studios, and that's why Netflix ultimately ended up making it, didn't want to make it either. And you see that conflict in several scenes in this movie. So I think that's all, personally, I find that all fascinating. Like, I think that's,
of course, people didn't want to financially support this. I mean, it's not the kind of film that's going to bring back an investment. I mean, even if you enjoy it, like, it's like a very artsy, maybe it'll be on like Criterion someday. Yeah. It's that kind of a thing. It's not.
Yeah, but you also got to understand some of the frustrations of that, because this is kind of how it works in Hollywood. Like, you make a few major hits and then you get to make a personal movie that, it's probably not really going to bring its money back, but the studio say, hey, but we like you, we like working with you, you've made us a lot of money, so we'll do this for you. And he couldn't get this. Like, he's won all these Oscars, he did make financially successful movies, and yet he kind of feels like an outcast in this industry. And I can see that even with your comments on Birdman, which I did like, not as much as Boyhood, which I think should have won Best Picture that year. Yeah. But like, even Birdman, it's like, you know, that's had more of a mixed reaction when people are almost kind of looking at face value. The reason Birdman won was because he was outwardly saying about superhero movies and franchises and what Hollywood has become, what the Academy voters were thinking, but most audiences weren't going to look at it that way.
Well, and of course they won, because it's all about how hard it is to be an actor and how hard it is to be. I mean, so of course it's going to win.
Well,
I mean, there's nothing that Hollywood loves more than stories about how hard it is to make movies.
That didn't help La La Land, though. Like, the Academy really connected with that whole thing where it's like the industry's turning into nothing but franchises and superheroes, and they're feeling like they're kind of getting pushed out into this different industry. And then that industry doesn't like these people coming from that industry because they don't like what Hollywood represents. I mean, this guy, and we won't get too much because it's like we clearly disagree on this one, but I just like this guy really has things to say about his movies, and Bardo, he might just have the most to say. And sure enough, like the shots, the sound, the editing, like, you know, you could look at individual scenes and just digest them and what do they mean even in a bubble, never mind the context of the whole thing. So I really like Bardo, but I understand, and this is why I've been very open, this is not an easy movie to watch. So I think more people, in all fairness, will agree with you rather than they will with me on this one.
All right, good.
All right, so it's time for your number 9 pick. What is that?
Number 9 is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Oh, good choice. Good choice on that one.
Yes. So taking a classic story, giving a new twist on it. I mean, we had the absolutely atrocious Zemeckis one this year. And so this was such it cleansed the palate, I guess you might say.
It's almost like this. It's like the legacy of Pinocchio was restored.
Yeah. And ironically, I mean, they make some of the same choices, but they just handle it and execute it so much better. Like the ending's not that different between the two movies, but I just think it's handled so much better. And I think it has something to say about religion, something to say about grief, something to say about parenting, all these different themes that are in the movie. I mean, when Geppetto says that Pinocchio is a burden, my heart broke. And the animation is absolutely outstanding. It's it might be the most beautiful stop motion I've ever seen. It is absolutely beautiful. And so it was just enthralling from the very beginning. And I wasn't expecting it to be a musical. I didn't even know that it had songs. I don't know if you'd say it's a full musical, but it's a movie with songs. And that was a surprise to me. I didn't know, like, there's 4 or 5 songs. And
I'd consider that a musical.
Yeah, and so that was a fun surprise. I thought they were enjoyable little songs, and it just had a huge heart. It was a very special artistic achievement.
I agree, but I'm going to withhold some of my comments on that one because it might be appearing later on this list. But I do agree that is a good choice.
The only, like, I guess, critique I would give of the movie is that I think they spent too long in the military section. That goes on a little long. But overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, but it was only, that was like, but what were you going to do? It's like, it was 15 minutes there, maybe cut it down to 10. I don't know. Otherwise, I did like this movie quite a bit.
That's the only reason why it's a 9.
Okay. So my number 9 pick, and I realize I have the wrong tab, but we'll do it anyway. All Quiet on the Western Front. This is the 2002 remake. Let's see if we can't actually get. There we go. So here's the thing. We see a lot of World War II movies, and it's pretty easy why. There's like a clear bad guy. There's clear persecution. World War I's a little bit messier because the circumstances on why we got there are not exactly as sexy. It seems like something that could have totally been avoided. And what I like about All Quiet on the Western Front is not only does it do the whole horror of wars thing extremely well, but it actually takes some time to go into the behind the scenes, like who was pulling the strings and who was making the decisions, and you see how totally disconnected they are from their soldiers, from the situation at hand. You really see not only that it's sad, but it was a lot of this was just so totally pointless. Like the final battle sequence in this movie is especially heartbreaking because it 100% did not need to happen. It was just one man's ego that started that whole thing. It's something you don't see very often in war movies. And so I really, my heart really broke for the people in this movie. And I really, this was a surprise for me. And I am so upset that Netflix deprived me the opportunity to see it on the big screen.
Yeah, they're not even allowing it in the AMC Best Picture series that they do. It's not,
this is like one of the top.
This
is one of the top 4 of the nominated films that deserves to be on the big screen.
Yeah, it's too bad. You think they would allow it just for that brief period where they're doing the Best Picture.
Yeah. Now I know you like this. It didn't quite make your top 10 list though.
Yeah, it made my top 15 though. So it was. I mean, because I was going through all of these movies, you know, this Oscar screeners, and just feeling underwhelmed by a lot of them. And then I watched this, and I felt like, okay, finally, this and Decision to Leave, I felt like we're kind of in the contention. And finally, I felt like, okay, these are good.
Okay, well, I'm definitely glad we agreed on the last couple. Let's see if we continue to agree. What is your number 8 pick?
My number 8 is one of the most crowd-pleasing movies of the year. It's Top Gun Maverick. Super fun, super exciting, well shot. The flight scenes were really good. The whole cast was very entertaining. It was very sweet with Val Kilmer and Tom Cruise in their scenes. So this just had everything that, in my opinion, you could want from like a summer blockbuster.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It didn't. I mean, if I was doing a top 20, then maybe it would squeak in there. I wasn't ever going to probably pick it for one of the... but I did see it in theaters a couple times, and that's always a high recommendation. And I would tell people, yeah, see it in IMAX or see it in 4DX. I also saw it in ScreenX, which wasn't... I don't know, the ScreenX thing really doesn't work as well as you would. It's a very weird experience. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was actually a little surprised Val Kilmer wasn't a Best Supporting Actor player a little bit more.
Me too.
Like, I mean, no offense to Judd Hirsch, like, but you know, like the fact that he could get in for his one scene, it's like, well, why couldn't Val Kilmer get in for his one scene? Like that was like the emotional moment of the movie.
I agree.
And by the way, unpopular opinion, I actually think Top Gun Maverick might win Best Picture at the Oscars.
No, I actually think too, because of the preferential ballot system.
Yeah, I think this could get enough number 2 and 3 votes that I think it could definitely surprise in that regard.
I feel like I will be really surprised if it's not Top Gun Maverick or Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think those are the clear favorites.
I think those are the clear favorites as well. Although, speaking of Everything Everywhere All at Once, my number 8 pick for the best film of the year is Everything Everywhere All at Once. And this is especially fun to put on because you might remember a couple weeks ago, I put Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness on my worst films of the year list because I called it the multiverse concept confusing, and this doesn't allow for a lot of heart, and all they're doing is they're getting cheap emotion off of, oh, remember this character, and it's like I could see the manipulation a mile away. But Everything Everywhere All at Once has brand new characters, we don't know them, and it does way more with the multiverse concept, and especially emotionally, because even in the midst of this craziness with the cooking rats and the pickle fingers and things like that, it is ultimately a story about a mother who's trying to connect with her daughter who can't speak to her mother. The husband's trying to save the marriage by doing something really drastic that might backfire. There is a lot of emotion in this movie that I was not expecting. And on top of it being emotional, it was just a lot of fun. Like, it's one of those movies, it's like, it kind of reminded me like of a good old Pixar film where it's like, it's a lot of fun and you're having a great time. And then it has those emotional moments that you just don't see coming. So I really enjoyed Everything Everywhere All at Once. I wouldn't be surprised if it won Best Picture.
Yeah, I had fun with it. I enjoyed it. Certain parts I felt like were a little try hard to me. Like, I don't know. And they got to the rocks and stuff. It was just like a little too much, I felt like.
Oh, I love that scene. I thought that was great.
I didn't love that. To me, it was just like they're trying too hard to be quirky. They're trying too hard to be out there and weird and everything. And so they kind of lost me a little bit with some of the stuff. But for the most part, I enjoyed it. I certainly gave it a fresh rating, and I thought it was fun. So and I'd be glad. I mean, if it does win Best Picture, I have no problem with it, because I think it's at least a movie that tried different things, and it maybe tried a little too hard in my opinion. But I think it would be a pretty fun, unique Best Picture winner. So I'm fine with that.
I don't think they were trying too hard. I think they really are just that quirky. These guys also made Swiss Army Man. If anything, Everything Everywhere All at Once seems like they're holding back.
Maybe. I don't know.
If you will, because they have made some truly weird stuff.
Yeah.
And this actually feels like the most mainstream thing they did make.
Well, like Swiss Army Man, it's like one part of it is weird. Like for the most part, it's like whereas like this, there was just so many different things that were. I don't know. I just felt like it was. I felt like it was definitely. There were definitely some parts where it was like, okay, you're trying too hard to be strange, but I still enjoyed it. I liked it. I just didn't love it.
Yeah. Well, okay, but bottom line is we did both like it, and
I liked it.
All right. So, what's your number 7 pick?
My number 7 is Apollo 10 and a Half, A Space Age Childhood. This is from director Richard Linklater, who I love. We talked about Boyhood earlier. I really enjoy his films for the most part. And this was such a nostalgic film, really going back to growing up in the 60s. And we did an episode of Obscure Animation on it. And we both spent most of the episode talking about our experiences growing up in the different eras that we grew up, and for me, the 80s and all the different parts of childhood that you can relate to in this movie. And I think it's his best animated film, better than Scanner Darkly and Waking Life. Which I like those, but I think this is his best movie, and it was just a really, really like nostalgia done right, in my opinion.
So I have not seen this movie. It's been in my Netflix queue for a long time, but I think I will have to now finally pop it on and watch it, because I like Richard Linklater. I like animation. The subject matter sounded interesting to me, so I don't know why I didn't get around to watching it.
It doesn't have much plot, so people that are like super, they need like a lot of plot, then might be frustrated by it. It's more sort of whimsical, looking back at childhood.
Well, I put Bardo on my top 10 list, so I don't necessarily need a lot of plot to entertain me.
Yes.
So there you go. All right. So my number 7 pick is a movie that almost made your list, but I think I liked it a little bit more. I am putting The Menu at number 7 on my top 10 list, because what a movie. This is one of those movies that I tell people, this is why I like going to movies. When you get something, and granted, I make it easier for myself by not watching previews. I actually wait outside the theater for the previews. So I don't know what most of these movies I'm about to see are about. But I truly didn't know what The Menu was about. I thought it was going to be about cooking, and I was kind of right. But this movie about this chef who he's somehow deranged, and yet he's calculated at the same time. He's turning food into an art form and a life statement, and some of the people are unwitting players in this, and some are actually really enjoying what's going on, even though it's absolutely insane. And Ralph Fiennes' performance, so no offense to the guy who got nominated for After Sun, Paul, whatever his name is,
Mescal,
yeah.
Mescal.
I did not think that was an Oscar-worthy performance. I would have nominated Ralph Fiennes instead, because Ralph Fiennes carries this movie in a way few actors can carry a movie. And just can't take your eyes off of him.
But I don't think it's a lead performance. I think it's a supporting performance.
Oh, I think it's a lead performance. I mean, I personally, if you're in more than 70% of the movie, then I think it's a lead. That's why I will defend Michelle Williams Fableman's performance even as being lead. It's not someone I would have nominated, but that's a lead performance in my opinion.
I don't agree.
So yeah, and Ralph Fiennes is definitely the lead, because especially since it's about him. Like, when people say, so what's this movie about? It's about this chef who does this art performance thing. Well, we don't need to get into semantics whether that's lead or not, but you definitely liked the movie though.
Yeah, I did. I did actually really like Paul Mescal in After Sun though. But I really like everything about this movie except for the ending is where I'm a little like, oh. But it's definitely a memorable ending. So I'm kind of warming up to it.
It's a very memorable ending.
But it's a little cynical for my taste.
Well, the whole movie's a little cynical. That's why he's doing what he's doing when he's pointing out the cynicism of his industry and the people who eat.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted them to find a way to, I don't know, just well, we don't want to spoil it, but
we don't want to spoil it.
But
I will say, like, probably the highlight of the movie was the printed desserts. The
tortillas.
Yeah, the tortillas. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was creepy in a special sort of way.
Yeah, and the whole cast was great, and it was
and Anna Taylor-Joy, she's the co-lead in this, and she's not been getting as much attention. But I mean, one of the reasons Fiennes is so good is because she works off of him so well. She's like the unknown she's the unknown ingredient in the kitchen, if you will, that he just doesn't know what to do with.
And I don't normally watch a ton of horror movies. I'm trying to do better, but my friend Stanford, doesn't watch any at all. And we do our Disney rankings every year, and we had this and then Barbarian, which is also, I thought, really well done. But I was like, I'm gonna push the menu on Stanford. Like, because it's so good, and so I did. I said, don't worry about seeing Barbarian. See the menu. I think it's worth it. Go out of your comfort zone. And he liked it. So somebody that hates horror movies, never watches them, he had it very high up on his Disney ranking because it wasn't a great year for Disney.
Yeah. The funny thing is I never really thought of the menu as a horror movie, but now that you've actually said it out loud, it's like,
especially with that ending.
There is an element to that, so I can see it being classified as a horror movie. So, all right. Well, anyway, we obviously both recommend that one. So, what's your number 7 pick?
I already said Apollo 10.5.
Which one was it?
Apollo 10.5 is my number 7.
Apollo 10.5. Oh, we're on number 6. Oops. Yeah. Sorry, it happens sometimes. Okay, what's your number 6?
Okay. My number 6 is Little Nicholas, as happy as can be, is the coda. And this is we did for Obscure Animation, me and Stanford. And this is a really lovely movie. The Little Nicholas cartoons were done by a pair, one that did the writing, one that did the drawings. And so what this movie does is it tells Little Nicholas stories, but then it also tells the story of the writer and the animator or the drawer, illustrator. And the writer, Renee Givenchy, his daughter is one of the directors and writers, and you can really tell that there's that personal touch. It's not only adorable and really, really cute little stories, but it also gets into the heart of what it is to be a creator. And also it's a lovely story about friendship between these two men that created these cartoons in France. And so I just absolutely loved it.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I mean, just from a little bit I saw, it's like I really have to watch this movie. So I'm gonna be looking to see if it's in theaters near me, and if it's not, where can I stream it? Because this definitely looks like something that's up my alley.
Yeah.
All right. So now
I would look at it. seems like the kind of thing that'll eventually end up on like Canopy or one of the library apps. So keep an eye out for that.
Okay, I will do that. All right, so now it's time for my number 6 film. I sense we're going to have a disagreement on this one. My number 6 film is The Whale by Darren Aronofsky. And this movie has had a lot of controversy. Some of it is justified. Some of it, I think people are way overstating. And this movie has been singled out for Brendan Fraser's real good comeback. Like, it's the comeback story of the year. But, you know, for me, it was a little bit more than just a great performance by Brendan Fraser. This is a movie that captures depression and how people cope with depression better than almost any other film I can think of. Of course, you obviously have Charlie, which is Brendan Fraser's character, who had a huge loss in his life and became a slave to his own body by indulging in his eating disorder. But then you have his ex-wife who drinks excessively. You have his daughter who lashes out. You have that one boy who comes near him who is looking for purpose in his life, and he clings on to a religion. The most interesting relationship is with the Hong Chau's character, who was the sister of Charlie's ex-boyfriend. And she stays with Charlie because it's like a connection with her brother, and yet she enables his eating habits even though she's a nurse, and she knows that he really is not that healthy. And this movie, especially considering my past, and I guess I'll share that story because this is why it's so personal to me. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was in a sense of Charlie. My life was not heading in the direction I wanted it to go. I had never been on a date. There was like no prospects for a future. And all I was doing was staying at home when I wasn't working and eating and eating and eating. And it got to the point where when I went to a doctor, the doctor basically told me that if I didn't make some life choices, I would be dead in 10 years. Advice that I took very much to heart. And so when I watched The Whale, I was just amazed that not only did Aronofsky truly get what it's like to be in that situation, but he put such a sympathetic face on it, kind of like how he did with The Wrestler, where you wouldn't normally spend time with the Mickey Rourke character, but once you got to see his life and you saw him as human, it's like it really. So The Whale, as hard as it is to watch at times, was a very, very moving experience for me. Although, spoiler alert to everyone who's watching it, Rachel does not feel the same way.
No, I do not. I appreciate everything you said, and you know, that's just the thing about film is everybody has different experiences. To me, it felt like it was just wallowing in misery and didn't have anything interesting to say about the characters or what was happening. And I just felt like everything was so extreme, especially the daughter, who I hated. I thought she was one of the most unpleasant, miserable characters I've seen in a movie in maybe ever. I really hated her character. I thought she was just a total cliche of these like sullen, miserable teenage characters that we get so often in movies. And I feel like it robs these teenage characters of their humanity, that to have them just be these like mini monsters. And I understand that it's hard being a teenager. I remember being a teenager and it being difficult, but they need to have some humanity to them. She was just the worst to me. I hated her. And I just felt like the movie was, I don't know. I just felt like it was a miserable experience and I didn't gain anything from it. And maybe that's my own flaw, but I just didn't think that the story had anything like ennobling or inspirational or anything. It was just like, why did I have this miserable experience? I didn't enjoy it at all.
Well, it's a tragedy. It's not supposed to be an uplifting movie now. I'm not going to.
But even a tragedy should have some like humanity that you connect with the characters. And I just felt like this was just one scene after another scene of him being miserable and
But who doesn't relate to being at a point in your life where, especially if you've gone through depression and life is really not what you thought it would be, and you really wish you could make amends? That's even why I think the daughter situation is tragic. That's why I don't blame her for being unlikable, because he feels like he has to do at least one good thing right. He wants to reconnect with his daughter. And as an audience member, we can only look in almost defeat. We know that there's not going to be a reconnection. She's too far gone for that to ever happen. And I defended the daughter portrayal only because, again, I know someone who was just as unpleasant as this girl to her dad when he, she perceived, messed up their family. But then, like, when she wasn't around him, she was a lot more pleasant. And so that's how I process the character. I mean, you can obviously process her differently. But no, I think this is, like, not only does it show the humanity, it also shows, like, the warning, like how easily depression can suck you up and just not let you go. And then sometimes by the time you realize you need to make a change, it might be too late at that point. So
I don't know. I felt like I needed more, like, from the characters. I needed more, like, more humanity. I can't think of another way to say it. And you got enough from it, and that's great. It was not enough for me.
I thought it had humanity in spades.
No, I was just like, why did I have this miserable experience? Like, what was the point? And it was just kind of, to me, it was like wallowing in this. So I really didn't enjoy it, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah, and I know some people who, after watching this movie, basically started making life changes, because what movies can do great is they can let you walk in someone's life. And to your credit, at least one of my friends said, this is was such a miserable experience watching it that it really made me stop and take a look at my life and where it was heading. So, but again, it's funny because you put it on your worst films of the year list. I put it on my best films of the year list. So I guess our audience will just have to decide what they want to do with that one.
Yes.
All right. So now we're at number 5. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Avatar: The Way of Water.
Okay.
And I wasn't expecting to have this so high, but I mean, I've always enjoyed the original, but it's not like favorite or anything. And I had so many unpopular opinions about so many of these Oscar contenders this year that I went into it kind of jaded by that point. And I was blown away by it. I thought it was absolutely stunning, which we knew that it would be, but I'm a big water person. I love the ocean so much. And so it was even more beautiful than I expected. It was
like
gorgeous.
Being in an aquarium sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, and I really like stories about families, and I enjoyed the story as far as the family connection between the siblings and between and just the whole family. I thought was great. I liked the fact that it was an immigrant story. It was a refugee story, so I enjoyed the story more than a lot of people seem to have. But I thought it was good, and it's definitely too long. I mean, so many movies are bloated these days, and it could use a good trim, and this is no exception. But overall, I was pretty dazzled by it.
Yeah. So fun fact: after we end this live stream, I'm taking my parents to see it in IMAX 3 because they haven't seen it. It'll be my 3rd time watching it. So
I've actually only been able to see it the one time.
When it's that long, it's really hard to
see.
It
is hard.
Second time. There was one of those nights. It was because I had insomnia and I couldn't sleep. And it's like, well, there's a showing in 10 minutes. I might as well go for it. But I agree. It is a very good movie. All right. So my number 5 movie is probably the one that I have the most difficult time selling people on, because the name is just so strange that people just kind of look at me. But it's a charming little family movie called Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. And yeah, I can see it. If you've seen the movie, you understand what's so charming about it. And if you haven't, and I'm sure you agree that when you tell someone who hasn't seen it, they hear that name and they're just like, so it's about a shell? And it's like, okay, look, you're going to have to put some suspension of disbelief. There's like a shell creature with shoes, lives in a house alone, and a documentary filmmaker comes in, discovers the shell, and starts a friendship to try to find his family. And, it's really not much deeper than that in terms of story, but Marcel is just such a wonderful character, and you like his optimism and his view on life, and it has some very profound things to say about the human existence that I was not inspecting. I, by the way, took because some, Hollywood executives like to say, like, well, you need to have fart jokes and you have to have action or else kids won't watch it. I took my niece and 3 of my nephews to see this movie, and they were all mesmerized by this little shell, even though I know that they weren't thinking about the deeper questions that were being discussed. It was kind of like watching the Muppet movie in that regard. But I really like Marcel the Shell with shoes on.
I do too. It's coming up on mine. So.
It's coming up on yours. Well, in that case, we will not close that window. But all right, so now it's your number 4 pick. And
my number 4 is RRR. I've been a big fan of SS Rajamouli for a long, long time. I love both the Bahubali 1 and 2, and they're available on Netflix if you haven't seen the Bahubali movies. And so I was really looking forward to RRR, and it did not disappoint. It's kind of funny because I actually saw RRR the same day as I saw Morbius.
Well, I'm sure that made it look all the better in comparison.
So that's a contrast right there of
Yep.
Sort of cynical studio filmmaking versus something with heart and energy and an artistic vision. And it's just, this movie is just so much fun, from the dancing to the singing to the spectacle of it all. Is a blast. The crazy action. He's fighting a tiger at one point. The great chemistry between the 2 guys. I mean, the Natu sequence is so good. It's just a blast.
Well, I hate to say, I have not seen RRR.
You haven't seen it yet?
No, it's somehow escaped me. I did hear the song that was that won the Golden Globe. That was a really good song, so I sense I would enjoy it.
It's on Netflix.
Oh, it's on Netflix. Well, there you go. I'm gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
All right. So because I don't have much to say about that one, my number 4 pick is The Banshees of Inisherin. And The Banshees of Inisherin is one of those morbid, dark comedies, if you will. Like, if only because, we see a lot of comedies, if you will, about female breakups. And this is essentially a male breakup story. There's 2 guys on this little Irish island who spend all time talking, and then one of them one day just decides he doesn't want to talk to the other person because he realizes, hey, I'm getting old, this guy is dull, and I'll die without having left something onto the world. And he decides to basically break up with him, and it just spirals out of control as the one who was broken up with, in a sense, he doesn't know why his friend doesn't want to hang out, and he starts doing these things to try to get back in his good graces, and then the other guy reacts poorly. It was weirdly funny in some way. Like, this is the kind of thing that you could probably avoid if you would talk things out, but they weren't going to talk it out, and it was a little heartbreaking too. Like, why did it have to go down? Especially since during this whole fight, you can see that there's still remnants of a friendship there, and it's just, I thought it was a profoundly tragic film. Now, you didn't mention this in your honorable mentions either, so I'm curious, did you even like The Banshees of Inisherin?
I was on the fence about it. I went back and forth whether I thought it was rotten or fresh. I think it's beautifully made. I think it's very well acted. I think it does have some pretty funny parts. For me, it lost me with the fingers. I just felt like that
extreme.
I did not feel like that character would do that, especially if he's a musician. He's going to want to, it didn't even make any sense for his goals. And then when what happens with the donkey was just, it lost me there.
The donkey was sad. So I don't want to spoil too much about the fingers, but, my wife looked at me and said, well, that gives a new meaning to the term cutting off your nose to spite your face.
So I did like it better than I'm not a fan of 3 Billboards, so I thought that it was better than that. So
well, I think they're about the same. Like I like them both equally as much. So anyway,
yeah,
I definitely like
Bruges. That's my favorite of his by far.
That one's probably his best one, I will admit. All right, so what's your number 3 pick?
My number 3 is a little movie called Hit the Road. And this is by first-time director Panah Panahi, and he is the son of Iranian filmmaker Jafar Panahi, who has made many wonderful films and is actually currently, he's been in prison off and on in Iran for his films. And he is currently in prison, as far as I know. And so then his son coming out with this film, and it is such a sweet little film. It is on Canopy. If y'all have the Canopy Library app, you can watch it for free right now. Hit the road, and it's about this family, and they don't even give the characters names. It's it's mother, father, older brother, younger brother, and this family is taking older brother to Turkey. Because he's they're trying to escape, and so it's very tense. You know, they're obviously on this tense trip, but it's also what makes it, I think, so great is that it's also like every road trip with a family. So the younger brother is absolutely adorable and really funny, and the dad, he has a broken leg, and so he's in the back seat, and he's super cranky and funny. And so it's not a unpleasant film. It's actually quite funny and sweet, but it's also got that tension there too. And you genuinely don't know what's going to happen. And they keep certain things ambiguous, like you don't know, or that you don't know what's exactly happening, and you don't know why he's seeking exile, why he's on the run. And you start to get little clues throughout the film. It's absolutely beautiful. Like, I have never seen a Iranian film that was set in the countryside in the desert of Iran. I've always, not that I've seen tons, but the ones I have seen have all been in like Tehran, in the city. So this was interesting to me to see like the desert of and the beautiful countryside of Iran, and it's just such a wonderful, lovely little film.
Oh, how wonderful. So I have not seen this movie, but I want to see it.
And a very strong debut. To have this be your first movie coming out of the gate is very exciting. And
you'll
like I said, you can watch it for free on Canopy.
Awesome. Well, I will have to look that up. All right. So we're on number 3, right? Yes. My number 3, I'm actually going to agree with you. I like this a little bit better. I am also choosing Avatar: The Way of Water. And yep, it improved on the first one in every single way. It was visually better. I actually even like that the villain, who was basically just a villainous carbon copy, actually was given just a little bit humanity, just enough to make him that much more threatening. I really love the story of family. I just love everything about this. Everything that it did, that the first one did, this did better. Now, I chose the first movie as the best film of the year, and I've had to always defend that decision. The only reason this isn't number 1, even though it's better, is because I did see 2 movies that I did like more than Avatar. But I agree, Avatar: The Way of Water is a stunning achievement, and for people who say like streaming has totally matched what theatrical can do, no. Avatar: The Way of Water shows that theatrical is still where it's at.
Yeah, yep. It's an experience. It really is.
So. All right, so number 2 for you.
Well, I kind of in my best of video, I did number 1. Okay. So you can take this, I guess, with this ranking with a grain of salt. But my number 2 is Marcel Lachelle with Shoes On. Absolutely loved this movie. I loved the whole story of him looking for his family, and I loved how funny it was. Like when he's sort of sassy back to Dean. It was so funny. He's like, "You could be helping me here." I loved how creative it was as far as all his Rube Goldberg devices to do different things that he sets up. Very, very charming and fun. And him and his grandma, wonderful. I had never heard of Marcel Lachelle. I had missed that as far as the YouTube videos and things. So it was all new to me. And I was just, I love animation. I love stop motion. And I saw it and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah, no, now the one thing I will say, I do kind of technically disagree with everyone and the filmmaker who don't take it personal. Dean, I would love you to come on the YouTube channel. I don't think this is an animated film. not really. But that doesn't. I think aside from the award eligibility, that's kind of a moot point. It doesn't matter. It's like it's just a really good and charming movie overall.
Yeah, yeah. Overall, I mean, when you actually see the like set pieces that they built.
Yeah, they're clever. They're really clever.
Yeah, I mean, but they actually had it. It's not that they just had Marcel in real life environments. They actually had to build the environments around him for most of the scenes. And so I think it counts. They had to have it in a special exception that they submitted to the Academy, and they were accepted.
Right. I mean, so. I find it a little confusing that this was considered animated, but the Lion King remake, which was 100% animation, wasn't considered animation by the Academy. So that or at least
I think
Disney didn't submit it.
Well, I mean, Disney
the Golden Globes nominated it.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was on the short list or not. It wasn't nominated, but
right. Well,
but I think Disney actively fought against that getting nominated because they want it to be a live action film.
Right.
So well, if that wasn't the case, then it might have been considered. But you have Disney actually saying, no, we don't want it to be counted.
Yeah. Also, other unpopular opinion, but I do think Avatar counts as an animated film.
Yeah. I mean, I would like. I have, if you count Avatar, I have. Obviously, I love animation because I have in my top 15. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of my choices are animated.
I think about 4 of my choices are animated. So I love animation too, although I don't take that into consideration. Like I just want it to be like one of the best movies of the year, and animation had a strong showing this year.
And it's especially strong when you consider that none of the main Disney Pixar releases made my list.
Oh yeah.
So
well, I mean, I did like Turning Red, but I wasn't going to consider it one of the best films of the year. But
so
I did.
But
Lightyear was okay. Strange World was okay. Okay, Disney had a terrible.
It was not a great year overall. Disney.
But you know who had a great year for animation? Netflix, because my number 2 choice was Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And for the longest time, this was actually number 1 until I saw one other film, and it was like there was no way I couldn't pick that as the number 1. And if I didn't, and for a while I was even joking, like, well, if I don't disqualify the Robert Zemeckis movie, Pinocchio can wind up as the best and worst film of the year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have that. Actually, I've seen it before.
It was almost too perfect. Pinocchio got robbed at the Oscars. Where was the best adapted screenplay nomination? Where was the best score? Where's the song? Where's the best picture nomination? You could have squeezed this in instead of women talking. And you know, here's one of the things. Like I'm going to talk about the ending a little bit. I'm not going to say what happens in the ending, but you know how you said like the Disney and this one had the same ending? They really didn't, because this movie actually toyed with an idea about the immortality and mortality, and it really did something with it that when it's over, you can't help but just really meditate on it. It touches you in a way that even the original Disney Pinocchio doesn't quite manage to do. And I think
that's why the fact that in this one that he didn't turn into a real boy, it didn't bother me as much because it was how it was executed. And again, how they worked in that him remaining immortal and not becoming mortal was actually like a character plot of a character point for the story. So like technically it is the same in the sense that they didn't turn to a boy, but
Disney did it because they wanted to make a sequel. Del Toro did it because he wanted to actually ask some questions about mortality. And I like how it took on fascism in a way that was, not too on the nose. I loved the relationship with Geppetto. Geppetto's really not that likable for some of this movie.
Yeah, like I said, when he says that Pinocchio's a burden, that broke my heart.
Yep, and the way that Geppetto's son dies, or it was like, that was just heartbreaking, especially since it's almost kind of like how All Quiet on the Western Front, someone just basically didn't want to bother with something, and it resulted in this huge loss. The images of the half-burned church are like very stunning. Like this is this is just such an achievement in filmmaking. And that's why this is why I think the Academy, not only they didn't do themselves any favors, they didn't do animation any favors, because if ever there was a chance to really say, you know, animation is just film, this was their chance.
Yeah, I mean,
to do it,
because yeah, they really, aside from Beauty and the Beast, they've really only recognized Pixar,
yeah,
as Best Picture, and so it would have been nice to have recognized this one because it was so well done and so well received. So.
Yeah, and this time it would have, yeah, it really would have made sense, especially since Women Talking. I don't know too many people who think that's one of the best films of the year. Some people do, but there's a reason.
I like it better than The Fabelmans. I was not a fan.
Well, I like The Fabelmans better than Women Talking, but and of course, like, it always feels weird when it's like, oh, 2 nominations, including Best Picture. It's like, really? Like, I mean, you should have at least 3. I think so. I mean, that's kind of getting on another tangent altogether, but I think Pinocchio was just robbed all across the board, and I hope Del Toro gets a second chance to tell the world. Like, I love what he said when he won the Golden Globe. Like, Pinocchio is not a movie for kids, but kids can watch it. And
yeah, I think it'd be great. I have no problem with it winning. I think it's obviously it's my top 10, so I really enjoyed it.
I know you're rooting for Marcel to win.
Well, I would love Marcel to win because I love that movie, but my number 1 is...
number 1.
Ready for that?
I know what it is, so I can't guess.
My number 1 is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I loved this movie so much. Every time I see it, I love it more. I've now seen it like 4 or 5 times. I just keep rewatching it. I have it on VOD now. I've seen it in the theaters. I think it does get a few points for me for the fact that it was so much better than I was expecting. It was so much better than it had any right to be. They could have easily phoned this in and made a generic, bland sequel. And the fact that they pushed themselves to make something truly artistically stunning, I think you have to give them a little bit. To me, that warrants some brownie points. But I absolutely loved the story. I thought it was so good. And the way that it takes on, in an odd way, there's actually some similarities between Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, and Pinocchio.
Yeah, because it questions mortality as well.
Yeah, they both question mortality. They both have like a sprite that's kind of a gatekeeper to a character that's kind of gatekeeper to death. That they have to deal with, and so I think there's actually some similarities between the two, but I absolutely loved the wolf character, the death character. I thought it was so well done, and it's been so long in animation that we had like a truly terrifying villain. I'm so tired of these villains from Disney in particular that sometimes they don't even have a villain at all, but they always have to have this like tragic backstory. We have to be sympathetic towards them, or they're like they change at the last minute. And I'm just sick of it. I'm tired of it. I miss like juicy, fun, over the top, campy villains.
Yeah, and then you talk about Strange World. What better point to have a true villain than an evil capitalist who's trying to wreck the obvious environmental message you're going for?
Right. Yeah. And so I'm just over that. And so I loved the villain in this. I loved the whole idea of the map, and the pure at heart gets different directions than the sort of the cynical. I loved Goldilocks and the 3 bears and their whole relationship and how that played out. I thought it was really good. Yeah. Perrito is like my new love. I absolutely just adored that character. The animation was absolutely stunning, especially that first 20 minutes, the whole action sequence, the way they used the hybrid animation and the changing the frame rates for the action was so beautiful and stunning to me. And it might be my favorite DreamWorks animated film. It's right up there with Prince of Egypt. I go back and forth. I just think they did an incredible job, and they didn't need to. And the fact that they pushed themselves, I really admire that. And it was just definitely the biggest surprise of the year. Definitely the movie I was pushing on people the most, saying, give it a chance. I know you think this is going to be lame. Try it. You'll love it. Everybody has loved it. that has seen it, and I'm so excited that it's gotten this kind of Greatest Showman type of legs, where that just shows to me what a good movie it actually is, because people are telling their friends, people are telling family. You can rent it on VOD, and it's still number 4 at the box office. People are still going to see it, which makes me so happy.
Yeah, this film was headed for a box office disaster for the after the first weekend. The word of mouth, just you couldn't buy that kind of word of mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly fine being like a small creator, you know, not being a small critic. I don't have any problem. But that's the one time that I wish that I had more of a reach, is when you have movies like this, that you're just like, it's so good, just try it. And I wish I had that reach to be able to say to people, it's really good, try it, it's really good. But you know, I do what I can, but it's just that it makes me happy that this movie has really taken off by so many people like me saying it's good, give it a chance, go, you'll love it. And kids are loving it. I mean, it's pretty scary for small kids, but
yeah, it actually earns its PG rating.
Yeah, I think they're enjoying being scared for once. A lot of kids. Sean Chandler, my friend, he took his. I think his youngest is 4 or 5. Anyway, and she came out. She was really scared by the wolf, but she was like, "I want to dress up as Puss in Boots for Halloween." So she loved it, and I don't know. It's just a special movie to me.
I'm glad it's special. Now, this was never going to come close to number 1 for me, but I have a lot of positive things to say about it. And actually, one of the most interesting things, this was fascinating for me for a number of reasons, because here's the thing. I'm a huge fan of Shrek, and I will always defend Shrek winning the first Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. But, you know, people cynically look at Shrek and like, oh, they got popular because they made fun of Disney. And I kind of told people, no, they were making fun of Disney, but it was also its own little fairy tale. But now you see Puss in Boots, and this is literally the kind of classic Disney film Disney used to make.
Yeah.
And I don't mind Disney doing things that are different. I don't mind the complex villain sometimes. I don't mind that they, you know, shake up the formula once in a while. But you know what? Disney did something really well, and there's a reason those movies are still considered special. And the fact that they don't do it anymore is not only heartbreaking, but now it's ironic because DreamWorks has now essentially owned them twice. They first pulled the mask off of Disney and showed where they were being lazy the first time. And now they basically said, you know what, we're going to make a Disney movie and we're going to do it better than Disney's doing it right now. Because maybe with the exception of Frozen, Disney hasn't made a movie in the last 6 or 7 years as good as this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I love Encanto, but I don't think it's as good as I think I'd put this movie over Encanto. I mean, I
would easily put it over Encanto
because I love the songs. You know, I'm a huge musical person, so it's apples and oranges, I guess. But I just what you're saying is like they were breaking the formula at first, which was what was refreshing about Frozen when it first came out. They was like, oh, this is something different. But now that
it's become a new formula,
every movie is either a generational conflict with parents that are flawed, or grandparents, depending on the situation, and that's the villain.
And really, why is your family the villain? Your family can't be the villain because you need to like that member and you need them to get back together.
Yeah, so it's not really like a villain, but they're like the antagonist, for lack of a better
and honestly,
word.
For a critic, that makes it a superficial conflict, even if it isn't for the general audience.
Yeah, and so you either have that with the generational conflict, or you have the surprise villain. And it's just, I'm tired of it. I miss dishy, fun villains from Disney, like Maleficent and Jafar and people like that were fun, to be bad, to be evil. Because I think it has like a useful purpose for kids. Like, it's important that kids know that like there are bad people out there. That's the thing. Like, not everybody is gonna be like have this sympathetic backstory and be this like, there are bad people who will want to do bad things to them, and it's good for kids to start to learn the difference between good and evil.
Yep. And then ironically, because Puss in Boots technically has 2 villains, Goldilocks and the wolf. Now, Goldilocks is the more complex character, but even the wolf at the very end, there's just a little moment of complexity, so it doesn't end quite the way you expect it to. But he can still be the villain.
Too, so there's 3 villains.
Oh yeah, you're right. I keep forgetting. Yeah, but he was like so non-threatening that I didn't consider him
He
to
was
be.
funny. He was pretty funny.
But but yeah, I mean, the reason people talk about the wolf is because it's like, yeah, they like that sense that someone's hunting them and like they have to defeat this person, and he's just so there are a lot of really wonderful things about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and by the way, like, so I was talking to someone on Twitter, and he said like, whenever they announce Shrek 5 and Twitter goes happy, they announce Story 5 and everyone says no, and it's like, well, we miss Shrek at this point. We don't necessarily miss Toy Story, but after Puss in Boots, and there's chance for growth there, why wouldn't we be excited about a Shrek 5? Whereas Toy Story has closed its story twice now. So we don't really want a Toy Story 5. We just kind of want it to be at this point. Like,
and especially because Lightyear was just kind of, it was,
Lightyear wasn't
that
great.
There's kind of that taste in everybody's mouth too.
Don't tell my nephew that, though. He loves Buzz Lightyear.
I like Buzz Lightyear. I don't love whatever that was.
Well, let's start wrapping this up with my number 1 pick. And this was we're probably not going to disagree too much on this one because you at least had an honorable mention. But when I saw Decision to Leave,
that's really
it had to bump Pinocchio off the number 1. Like, this is like, okay, I called Bardo pure cinema. This is also pure cinema in the other direction. Aside from it just being beautifully shot and well made and everything, like, these are characters you can really sink your teeth into. Like, you almost feel like you know them as you watch this film. And then it just makes me more complex when it finds out you really don't know them. But then when you think about some of the things, maybe you should have known. This is just a fascinating movie about, and actually it's funny because now the 2 films that bookend my list are both about guys going through midlife crises, if you will. And this detective is investigating this woman for supposedly murdering her husband, and he kind of likes her and she's making him feel alive, and that's a huge conflict of interest. But the feelings are real, and she might have feelings for him, but you're not really sure if you can trust her or not. And what I like about this is the characters are not dumb. They act in realistic ways so that when the story unfolds, it's not like something unexpected happened because someone didn't do the logical thing. Like, the T's and the I's were crossed and dotted, and it is a great, fascinating mystery, in my opinion.
It's really good. Very well made, very good story, very well acted. And I said in my review, I felt like it was a modern day Double Indemnity.
Yes, that's what I was
relationship
thinking about too.
And so I think that it's one that I wouldn't be surprised if it kind of moves up my list. It was originally in my top 10. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done.
Yeah. And by the way, aside from Pinocchio, this movie also got screwed at the Oscars. I haven't, except for All Quiet on the Western Front, I haven't seen the other foreign language films, but I would have a hard time thinking any of them were better than this.
At least Pinocchio got something.
At least Pinocchio got something.
Zero.
Yeah, Decision to Leave was just one of those, like, it was almost kind of like Top Gun not showing up on cinematography. Like, what the heck? How does this?
I think because it was distributed by this movie thing, and I don't think they pushed it. I bet you if this was on Netflix or Apple, I think it would have gotten nominations.
It probably would have.
Which sucks.
But anyway, so I liked your number 1 choice, even if I wouldn't have given it number 1, but I definitely could see why you would. Hopefully my number 1 choice you approve.
Yeah, I really like this.
Now, did you think I was going to go in that direction? Because
last time I thought you were going to have Babylon as your number 1, and I was going to die.
Really? No. Well, okay. So here's the thing. This was a clue that it wasn't going to be number 1 because I actually go up to 5 stars, and I told you last time I gave Babel 4, so it clearly couldn't be the best film of the year. But I do love Babel. But again, like, it's I even like the elephant scene. I thought that was funny. I actually thought that was funny, but maybe it's because I'm a guy. I don't know. But yeah. But again, like I know, but Apple, look, there are some movies that even though I give like a positive review to them, I do, I kind of go by the Roger Ebert school of thought. Like you got to give the movie its day in court. So even if it's a movie that I don't like in my review, it has to reflect what it's like to watch the movie. So if someone's reading that review, that's the kind of movie it seems like that they like, that they would see themselves in that movie. So I bet you, like, if you read my print review of Bardo, even though I gave it 4 stars, you would probably read that review and go like, okay, I'm glad you liked it. It doesn't sound like it's for me. So
yeah,
that's where our job becomes difficult.
Yeah.
Like we have to really express what it's like to watch that movie.
That is a good thing, that if people can kind of find a critic that they at least understand, and so that way when you know that, okay, like Rachel doesn't typically like slasher movies, so I know that going into it when I'm reading her review, right? You know where we're coming from, and then or watching the review, depending on what it is. But I encourage people, as opposed to just going off of Rotten Tomatoes, I encourage people to get to know a critic and follow their reviews regularly, and find somebody that you, even if you don't necessarily agree with them on everything, you kind of understand where they're coming from, and can help you to know, okay, what do I want to see?
And the percentages and the stars and the thumbs don't mean anything without context. Anyway, the Avengers getting 95% in Rotten Tomatoes doesn't mean it's one of the greatest films of all time. It just means 95% of people liked it. And without their reviews, you're not going to find out if that's a movie that you would probably like to watch. So, I agree. So anyway, thank you everyone for joining our top 10 best films of the year list. And it seems like the only contentious one was The Whale. And actually, knowing you, knowing who you are and how you like happy romantic comedies and things like that, I am totally not surprised you don't like a movie like The Whale. Oh wait, you also didn't like Bardo, but I mean, The Whale was the one where it's like that showed up on your worst list. It wound up on my best list. So we'll have everyone, you can kind of listen to what that movie's about, our takes, and you can decide whether you want to watch that or not. That's kind of what we're here for.
Yeah, I think we didn't have that many that you didn't like on my list because you hadn't seen a bunch of ones on my list.
Well, but the ones that I didn't see sounded really good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I technically disagree with you on Chippendale. I gave that 2 stars.
Okay.
But it was one of those weird, I enjoyed it, but I still gave it 2 stars because there was, about all the cameos and stuff. There was like, you'd have to read my review or watch my podcast that I did with Mike. It was just one of those weird things, like, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I don't think I'm actually enjoying the movie. I think I'm enjoying the references, and that's not really a movie. But hey, I mean, I did admit, like, well, I don't think you're going to have a bad time if you watch this.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought that even the story worked for me, but I can understand it not be a favorite. But there we go. There you go. Yeah, let us know if you're listening what you think.
Yep. Comment below. You can subscribe to me and Rachel. These are our Twitter handlers, and we post our stuff. And after we end, I'm going to talk to her about maybe another collaboration future on, but I won't say it live just in case she doesn't want to do it. But even if you don't want to do what I'm thinking of next time, obviously we'll have you on my channel. And when am I going to get to be on the underrated animation or Disney thing? Like, these is what I love to talk about.
We need to do it. I was just thinking about that.
All right. Thanks for joining, everyone, and flame responsibly. Have a good one.
Bye.